Why are we thinking about culture change? Because it's not a quick fix. We're never going to have a stage of church life that we've stopped changing things. We're always going to be wanting to grow in maturity, grow in godliness as a church, as a fellowship. And it's never a quick fix. It's always through Bible teaching. It's always through prayer. It's always through example. And it can be very slow. I've already heard this morning, I won't say who, but some of the friends I've just met, of a 26-year process to change a particular church in this room here. You can ask me later who it is. 26 years they started. More recently they had intense discussions, but the actual idea of changing started 26 years ago. It's a slow transformation in church life. Truth takes time. Truth takes time. And part of that is because ministry progress and growth, the changes we want, depend on, it's a bit of a technical sentence, I don't like that sentence, depend on cultural alignment with ministry goals. What does that mean? It means that our programs and goals need to be aligned with our convictions, basically. And we need to keep rethinking the whole of church life around our convictions and get things aligned. You know how you just end up with ministry starting and groups starting out of goodwill, different people starting different things long before you came to the church, and you're there now. And when you think about it, it's not quite aligned with the Great Commission and growing disciples and equipping disciples. There's a lot of stuff around the edges there, good stuff, Christian stuff, but not aligned with the clear commission of Christ to win and to grow disciples. I'm seeing some nods in the room. Another reason for thinking about this idea of culture is it does some heavy lifting. It's the whole example thing. I really am a great believer in the demonstration principle. Ministry is caught as well as taught. It certainly is taught, but it's caught. As people rub shoulders with each other and rub shoulders with people who really understand Christian ministry, they get it. That's one of the joys of being in a thing like today, isn't it? They're just rubbing shoulders with each other. But in church life, where week by week, you've got people and leaders particularly who are learning ministry. How do they learn ministry? It's from what you do. They're catching it. They're catching your motivations, your convictions, your priorities. And that sometimes will speak louder than what you're saying in the pulpit. So we need to be living out the culture that we're teaching, which we will come back to. Well, the last line there is really saying that, isn't it? Our behaviour as leaders communicates the values and influence on culture that we want. So one of the questions I'm going to get you to talk about today with each other is, how do you need to be changing? What's not consistent in the way you live with the culture that you want your church to have? I'll give an example of that up front. I want all of our church members to be speaking the word of God to others somehow, whether it's through sending a birthday card or making a phone call or reading the Bible one-to-one, and particularly with unbelievers who are at work and in their street. They say to me, well, I'm very busy. I've got a job. It's very hard to do that. Now, I need to say to them, well, I have a job too. My job is running vine growers, or your job is being a pastor. The reason I'm speaking to my neighbours is not because I'm a pastor, it's because I'm a Christian. So sometimes we can preach personal evangelism and personal discipling and reaching our neighbours for Christ, and we excuse ourselves somehow because we've got so many counselling opportunities, so many formal opportunities that come to us to preach Christ. So we don't have to do that neighbourhood stuff. Well, that just screams out hopeless stuff to our members. They have their full-time job. We have our full-time job, which happens to be in Christian ministry and leadership. I need to fit in personal evangelism around my full-time job, just as they do, and give a priority to it. And then it starts, when we start speaking about personal evangelism and disciple making, they see us doing exactly what we're asking them to do with their neighbours, with their work colleagues, with their extended family. Because we are Christian, not because we're pastors. That's an example of inconsistency that I wrestle with all the time. So doing this kind of stuff helps Jackie and I greatly to work hard at reaching our neighbours and friends and family for Christ. Otherwise, just rank hypocrisy, isn't it? So why culture change? Well, here's a little quote from my brother Tony, who co-authored Trellis and Vine with me. And it's on the LRI blog, the Leadership Resources blog. Culture is really hard to change. It doesn't just consist of ideas, it consists of practices, habits and traditions that are embedded down. It's the way we do things around here. It's more than what we just believe, it's the way those beliefs are expressed in a multitude of practices and habits. I think the printing's quite small on your page, so it helps me to read it. Changing a culture is far more than changing someone's mind. You can sit around as a group of elders, work through Trellis and Vine and say, this is what we want. But the way we do things around here almost certainly screams out the opposite message all the time. Whether it be the way small groups are run, the way our church service is run, or expectations, changing the way we do things around here is a 3, 4, 5, 6 year process, or 26 down here, 26-year process that's painful and slow. Most pastors don't want that. They want a bolt-on idea, some content they can put into their existing culture that will change it, and that won't happen. And finally, he says, as we talk to others about how culture change happens, we say that it's going to take 3 or 4 years to see any sort of significant change. You'll have to start small, be very intentional, be very disciplined and persevering, and you'll see change. For most busy pastors, that's hard. They're busy, they want something they can quickly do. Do you want to ask just a short question time just on culture before we go into a framework for culture change? And you need to use the microphone. Let's see how this goes. Any quick questions at this point? Happy to move on if there aren't. Todd, thank you.
Carl, I just wonder if you could speak to this issue of culture a bit more in terms of do we tend to underestimate it, and in what ways have you seen frustrations occur with culture when a pastor is seeking to bring change?
We do. We severely underestimate the power of the resistance of the existing culture. Yes. And this is not just in church life, this is in other aspects of organisation and society as well. And some of you may have studied this at times. But yes, we underestimate the resistance and power of the existing culture. And the second part of the question was how...
In what ways have you seen efforts frustrated by culture?
Yes. Well, a simple one in our context today is you would all love the idea of people reading the Bible with each other one-to-one. And it's a fairly common topic that comes up when we talk about disciple making and the Great Commission. If you tell the congregation to do that without demonstrating the benefits and demonstrating with a few, doing it with some, letting it bubble up from below, and you only work from the top down from above. And I see a lot of pastors doing this on evangelism, all kinds of things. We'll just get the book out, we'll get this idea out, we'll spend a couple of Sundays on a topic, and then expect the whole congregation to embrace it, without working from the bottom up as well as the top down to demonstrate the benefits, the growth of people, the reaching out to neighbours that will come through one-to-one Bible reading. And so you end up with half a dozen people, maybe 20 people having a go at it, but it never becomes part of the church culture. The rest of the church are thinking, that's what the pastor does. I don't read the Bible, I don't make disciples. That's what ordained people do. You haven't